Hello and Assalamu alaikum. My name is Tariq Ahmed. The Arabs had a prayer, "Oh Allah, protect us from every Tariq, except the one who brings good." So I pray that I am a Tariq who brings good to you in the course of this podcast. This is the 8th episode of The Democratic Way. Thank you so much for watching this podcast series. Thank you for subscribing at taraqa.substack.com, taraqa.substack.com. If you prefer YouTube, thank you for subscribing at the channel Freed by Islam or wherever you get your podcast series. I really appreciate your watching. I appreciate your sharing these episodes. I appreciate your liking them and commenting on them. I read every single comment. Thank you so much for your time and for your attention. I really, really do appreciate it. So to be a Tariq who brings good, I need to be a Tariq who is kind. And kindness is not to be found in anything, but that it adds to its beauty, and it is not withdrawn from anything, but it makes it defective. These are the words taught to us by the Prophet of Allah, and they are so important for me in this podcast series because I used to do political commentary and be very harsh. There wasn't kindness in my political commentary. And when I made the decision to change that, I found that hadith and it made it so clear to me what was defective about the commentary I had been doing. And I'm very committed to being kind to you and to our subject matter. And I say that because it may not seem like I'm being kind. Our subject matter is Bill Clinton, and in particular, his domestic policy after he was elected president. In episode 7, we talked about his positioning himself in the Democratic primaries to the right of other candidates. And we talked about ways in which he shifted himself, shifted the party rightward just through the positions he took during the campaign. And you could say that he did that in part in order to position himself as candidate versus George H.W. Bush, who was president of the United States and a Republican in this contest. George Bush does lose this contest to Bill Clinton, but and we will talk about this election at a later time because of the importance of the third party candidate you saw there, Ross Perot. But today we're really just focused on the domestic policy, and we won't even have time to go into foreign policy of Bill Clinton. So what's important about looking at his policy at all? Well, when Bill Clinton became president, he brought in with him into the Democratic Party his leadership team from his campaign. These are the people he trusts. These are the people that he relies on. These people become ascendant in the Democratic Party establishment. They become the Democratic Party establishment. Bill Clinton, his leadership team is essentially what we see today. Year after year after year, his people or the people that they initiated and trained and guided and molded in their own image. So the Democratic Party leadership that we have today, if you don't understand where those policies come from, we're going to learn a lot about it right now. So in 1992, he's elected president. The Democratic Party has been in control of the House for more than 40 years and still is when he's elected in 1992. And in 1992, the Democrats have won the Senate. And so he's in control of all three. He's in control of the White House. He's in control of the House. He's in control of the Senate. It should have been very easy for him to move forward on his policy agenda. There is one thing that he does pass. We'll talk about it. One thing that we know about Bill Clinton is that he, again, relies on the people he trusts the most. He trusts Hillary Clinton. In 1992, he makes her, this is the first lady of the United States, he makes her the head of a commission on healthcare reform. That's unusual compared to other first ladies. It's not a common thing for first ladies to be in charge of a policy or a role like that. But put that aside for the moment. He does it because how much he trusts her. She doesn't trust anybody else. Her commission keeps everything they do secret. Healthcare reform was incredibly important to the American people because of the rising costs of healthcare, the rising cost of insurance, just the rising cost of healthcare service, and its effect on making the poor poorer, and in taking the middle class and taking its wealth. So it was very important, but she kept everything secret. And any plan that the president offered would have had to go to the House and the Senate anyway. So the House and the Senate were full of Democratic plans and even plans by Republicans, but more than 100 healthcare plans. The Library of Congress has what's called the Congressional Research Service. And at the time, the Congressional Research Service, much of its work was analyzing bills for members of Congress in a nonpartisan, completely objective way. They're faced with 100 healthcare plans. So they had a guide to all of those plans. It was like this thick. It's printed on paper because, it's the 1990s, right? And it's thick, it's wide too. It's more than legal paper in width. Like the length of legal, that wide. It was super wide. It was a flip chart. It was one comparison after another. Healthcare plans were grouped because you just couldn't have 100 columns. I mean, it's astonishing. It's astonishing. And not one of them pass. Not one of them become law. During the almost 2 years that it took for the Clinton Commission to come out with its healthcare plan, the opposition, I don't just mean the Republicans, I mean the healthcare industry, the health insurance industry, they were not silent. They did not wait. They flooded the airwaves because in the 1990s, we didn't have streaming services. We didn't have TikTok. We didn't have Facebook even. Okay. In the 1990s, we had television, broadcast television even. It wasn't even cable television for the most part. We had some cable television. That's true. And we had radio and ads are flooding them from the health insurance industry and from lobbyists for different wealthy and powerful segments of the industry that all wanted healthcare reform to go away. And they made healthcare reform look like the boogeyman. And the Clinton plan was dead on arrival as a result, because they had already poisoned the space. The whole country was following these ads and believing that healthcare reform was going to make things worse, not better. And so the Clinton plan failed. And there's a couple of reasons that it failed. One, it failed despite the fact that it was conservative. So I just described how they had kept it hidden. But when it came out, it was not single payer healthcare reform. It was not Medicare for all. It was not any kind of liberal concept in healthcare reform at all. It was another conservative plan, but it failed because, the Republicans didn't need to see Bill Clinton have a win with healthcare reform, so it failed. If the Clinton administration had wanted something like universal healthcare reform, there were the votes for it in the House. They could have done it. And we have never had from that leadership team any proposal remotely like single-payer healthcare reform. The reason that Obamacare was not single-payer healthcare reform, because President Obama's team from the Democratic leadership, very, very conservative. So anyway, that's healthcare. President Clinton had also campaigned on welfare reform. He said that he would end welfare as we know it. And he did, during his 2 terms in office, kick tons and tons of people off of welfare. He vetoed himself more than one plan because it didn't have strong enough work requirements. Right now in 2025, people are mad at Donald Trump for requiring requiring people to work in order to get benefits. That's not his plan originally. That's a Clinton idea. That's a Bill Clinton idea. That's a Democratic Party leadership idea. Bill Clinton said that he was going to end welfare as we know it. He did. So healthcare reform, welfare reform, these are attacks on the poor. And so is the 1994 crime bill. That's the initiative that he actually gets done in just 2 years. The 1994 crime bill. Very important because Bill Clinton loses the House of Representatives. The Democrats, after more than 40 years of control, lose the House of Representatives in the 1994 election. But before the Republicans come into power, Bill Clinton passes the 1994 crime bill. What is that? Well, remember in episode 7, we talked about how tough he was on crime. And what did he do? Well, in particular, the 1994 crime bill gave us truth in sentencing, which sounds so lovely. But what it means is that parole, an early release from prison for good behavior, this essentially became difficult to get, if not impossible. Because it's not truth if you're sentenced to 10 years and you get out in less than 10. That's according to Bill Clinton. And sentencing is not fair necessarily according to race. So, for example, sentencing laws for drugs, there are drugs that were abused more by rich white kids like cocaine in the 1990s. And there are drugs that are abused more by poor people because that's all they can afford. And the sentences are higher on those drugs. And they happen to be poor people of color too. How about that? So the prisons fill with people of color who can't get out early because of truth in sentencing. And it gets worse because Bill Clinton's crime bill also included 3 strikes. And 3 strikes means that if you had 3 crimes that you were convicted of that qualified, even if they were nonviolent crimes, there are a lot of nonviolent crimes on the list, even if they were drug-related crimes, and tough on crime, tough on drugs, you would, on your 3rd strike, be sentenced to life in prison. Mandatory. Life in prison. And again, truth in sentencing, same bill. So now, truth in sentencing, 3 strikes are out. Disproportionately heavy sentences already exist for crimes done by blacks and brown people. I mean, is it any wonder what our prison population looks like today and why it's skyrocketed in size? No, it's not. It's the 1994 crime bill that's largely to blame. And it's the same Clinton leadership team that is responsible for it not going away since then. The 1994 crime bill had one thing that Republicans hated in particular. It had an assault weapons ban. And unlike the other things that we just discussed, the assault weapons ban, which made most Republicans vote against it because of the NRA, the assault weapons ban had an expiration date on it. It wasn't going to last forever. We enjoyed an assault weapons ban and the incumbent and the resulting fewer deaths from assault weapons for a number of years, and then it went away because it was not renewed. Well, if Bill Clinton is so tough on crime and he's so tough on welfare and he's so tough on healthcare because he doesn't give us any healthcare reform, he's just tough on the weak and the poor, who is he nice to? Well, he's nice to bankers in particular. Especially in 1996, he reforms banking laws. There were these very tough banking laws, the Glass-Steagall laws. He relaxes those. He doesn't break the laws. He doesn't break the glass, if you will. But he is very, he's very much opposed to these tough banking laws because the Democratic Party is getting tons of money from lobbyists, tons of money. And so they relaxed the banking laws. 10 years later, what do we get? We get a banking crisis in America, and the banks have to be bailed out. Guess what? By, again, a very Clinton-forward Democratic president. So he's nice to bankers, and he's also nice to investment bankers. This is the last domestic policy we'll have time for, but he's big on free trade. It's another conservative idea. The deregulation of the banking is a conservative idea, and so is free trade. Free trade means what? It's NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, is something that started under Ronald Reagan to create this giant free trade area, Canada, United States, and Mexico. And Bill Clinton loves this idea. It didn't become law under Ronald Reagan. It didn't become law under George Bush. It became law and ratified by Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton is pushing for it to be ratified, in fact. Because of NAFTA, we're going to do this very quickly because of the time, but jobs left America, and they left America in large part because an investment banker could go to a company and say, hey, you could do this much more cheaply in another country. So let's sell off these factories and these parts and stuff like that. And, the workers, they'll find other jobs. They'll be okay. Don't worry about them. And we'll just move the company, and then you'll have saved so much money. So you'll be able to pay our fee, and you'll be able to give yourselves bonuses, for saving so much money. And the stockholders will be happy. So win, 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 right? And the investment bankers sold this to company after company, especially in manufacturing. And we lost 700,000 jobs in the United States. Manufacturing jobs, well-paid manufacturing jobs. We had maybe more McDonald's, maybe we had more service jobs, maybe we had more lower-paying jobs, but we lost the high-paying manufacturing jobs. And NAFTA was just the start of it. President Clinton was a big fan of free trade because he got lots of campaign contributions from it, and so did Democrats in the leadership. And so we had, he wanted a free trade deal with the Pacific Rim. He was a big proponent of the WTO. We had eventually got the WTO under the next conservative president, who was a Republican. But, this leadership team has been free trade, pro-banking, pro-money, soft on them and hard on the poor ever since. And that's just a fact. We're going to talk about foreign policy too, because foreign policy, the legacy of the Clinton administration and foreign policy, is also something that we live with today. So come back, please, for episode 9. I apologize for going over, but I thank you so much for your time.